Welcome, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're commemorating 9/11. And those of us who are old enough will never forget that day, some 20 years ago. Well, our guest this morning, Stanley Praimnath, remembers it and lived it. He was in one of the towers that was ultimately hit and fell in New York. He joins us this morning to talk about that day 20 years ago and the miracle of living through it. Stanley, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the courage that you've had over these years to share that miraculous day for you when we know that thousands lost their lives and the world as we know it changed on 9/11. Take us back to that morning 20 years ago and how your morning was going and what that day was like.
20 years ago, if I remember well, it was a Tuesday morning. And I was off the Monday, so I was looking forward to go back to work on that Tuesday. So I'm taking a shower. And we had this little house with 2 bedrooms, not that we have a big house now. And I have 2 daughters and my wife, and she is fixing her hair. I'm taking a shower. And she is telling me, Stan, I'm having a bad hair day. And I still can't figure out what a bad hair day is. I'm taking the shower, and in my heart, I'm praying the same prayer I carried all through the years. Lord, cover me under your precious blood, take us to work, bring us back home in peace and safety. And looking at me, you would never tell that I was saying a prayer in my heart. I told her afterwards, I said, I'm going to wear a khaki and a white shirt and go to work. And I'm going to wear that lucky shoe. She said, Stan, that's an ugly pair of shoes. Stan, for $110, I could have gotten you a Clark, a Bostonian, a Florida. Went on with the names. I don't even know the names because I am not a shopper. Mm-hmm. She buys everything that I wear. Mm-hmm. So I commuted from Long Island, Elmont, the little town that we live in, to Lower Manhattan. Mm-hmm. So I drove half of the way, park up the car, and I would take the A train, the letter A train, to go downtown. Wonderful day, bright, sunny, nice. So I commuted Lower Manhattan. One trip or one side of the journey would be close to 2.5 hours, depending on traffic. Mm-hmm. So I commuted on an average, let's say, 5 hours per day. I'm at Lower Manhattan. Stop in the same bagel store, pick up a raisin bagel, cup of coffee, $1.25 in a brown bag, my briefcase in another hand, pushes the button of the elevator on the lobby level. Mm-hmm. And I work on the second tower, Trade Center number 2, the South Tower, the one that got hit last. Mm-hmm. I worked on the first floor. I worked there as an assistant vice president for a Japanese bank, Fuji Bank. Mm-hmm. Push the button, and here I am on the Sky Lobby. Got out of the Sky Lobby on the 78th floor, walk across the hallway, pushes the next button, took the local elevator, went to the 81st. So I'm on the north side. I walked all the way to the south side, the hallway. As I reach the end of the building, the end of the floor that is, make a right into a large glass enclosed office. One young lady is there. She is making copies at a copier, Delise Seriano. So as I walked in, she's making copies, and she says, Stan, how you doing? I said, I'm special, thank you. And she smiled. She says, I know you're special. That's what she said. Mm-hmm. Now, my teacher used to tell us, anybody asks you, how you doing? You tell them you're special, because in New York City, people are so busy, you tell them, how you doing? Before you answer, they're gone. Mm-hmm. If you tell them you're special, they will turn back and give you a look. Mm. And 100% of the time, they would do that. So we exchanged pleasantries. I had 2 desks. This is where the phone is, and about 6 feet away was where I used to sit. We were in the middle of a consolidation / a merger with 2 other large Japanese banks. So things were kind of a disarray. The phone rings, my mother calls, Stan, are you okay? Yeah. My brothers, Steve, Paul, Bill, same questions. Nobody told me anything, didn't have a clue. Apparently, when I was in the elevator going up, the first plane hit the first building. The building is soundproof. I'm in the elevator, didn't hear anything. Mm-hmm. So they exchanged pleasantry, hang up the phone, and I'm saying to myself, gosh, there's a lot of love here. It is not even 9 o'clock and they're calling me.
So are you thinking something is awry, or do you have any idea?
I didn't have a clue what happened. And I'm just saying to myself, wait a second, why are they calling me? But at this point, even the young lady making the copies did not hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm walking to the other desk to put my bag and the coffee down, in the corner of my eyes, I could have seen the North Tower, World Trade Center 1. So as I'm looking towards that direction, what I saw was huge chunks of fireballs falling down from the sky. Like, oh my God, what is happening? So I walked closely to the window, huge panes. And I stood on a little ledge and I'm looking up because the first building was hit way up. And as I'm looking, I'm seeing chunks of fireballs falling from the sky. So I call out to Delise and say, Delise, come take a look. What is happening? So she looks, and we're seeing both of us are seeing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I got scared. She said, Stan, I'm scared. I said, hold on 1 second. I reached for the phone, called my boss, Peter. Pick up. No answer. I called his boss, Bobby. Bobby, pick up. No response. I said, let's get out of here. Ran out of the office, down the hallway, back to the local elevator. Took the local elevator, went back to the sky lobby of the 78th floor. Multiple elevators, massive amount of people, all the big shots from all the offices are right there.
Mm-hmm. Is everybody now trying to get out at that point, you think?
Everybody now is trying to go downstairs to get out.
Okay.
Now remember, second building is not hit yet.
Right.
So we see all these people and wanting to know what is happening. We stood in front, the group of people we recognize from our main office, like all the big shots, the head of HR, the CEO, and all these people. They're standing up there. Delise and I, 20 of us got into this elevator. We were zoomed down again, and the doors open up. Right in front of me, when I stepped out, there's a turnstile. And the security guard looks at me and says, where are you going? I'm going home. I saw fireballs falling from the sky. He says, no, your building is safe, it's secure, go back to your office. And you can hear the whoop whoop sound and the sirens and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear the intercom. Your building is safe, it's secure, go back to your office.
Mm-hmm. Did you believe it?
Well, I didn't know what to believe. And I did not know that a plane hit the first building. Had I known, not have gone back in.
Mm-hmm. But you did. You turn around and you go back in. Let's take a break here, Stan. And when we come back, we'll pick your story up. Stay on point. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're remembering 9/11. 20 years ago, our lives and America was forever changed. Our guest this morning is Stanley Praimnath, and he was one of the people in the Twin Towers who made it out, who lives 20 years later to share his miraculous journey to being saved and living after 9/11. And so, Stanley, before we went to break, you were talking about the confusion and people sort of sensing, even though they're in this huge building, the second tower, and it's soundproof, but people, I guess some may be knowing, getting a call that one tower had been hit, and maybe others just sensing that there's a problem and trying to get out. So you get down to the Sky Tower, and the security guard says, the building is secure, it's fine, go back to work. And you trust that, and you go back up to the 81st floor. And then what happens?
So the security guard says, go back, your office is safe, it's secured. And I'm reliving this moment as I'm deciding what to do. I'm reliving 1993 when the truck bombed the Trade Center. I was working on the 79th floor.
Wow.
And I remember February 26th at around 1 o'clock, all I heard was boom. And 1,200 pounds of explosive in a truck, a pickup truck, exploded, and all hell broke loose. So I'm reliving that moment, and I remember the lady who I sat across the desk from, my supervisor at the time. She had ordered food, and we were having a light lunch. And she starts to scream, how can you stop and eat at a time like this? We're going to die. I said, lady, if I'm going to the Lord, I'm going with a full stomach. And I continue eating. And by grace, I ate that food. And I got home the next morning, 2:00. My wife thought I died. So I relived this entire moment in that brief second, and I stepped back in that elevator. The door closes. And as the door closes, I'm looking at the face of people who I would never see again. I'm looking at Alicia Levin, and she's looking at me smiling. And I'm looking at Kawauchi, and he had his sweater tucked in his khakis. And I say, come on, man, it's a warm day. And everybody chuckles.
Uh-huh.
And I never imagined I would never see those faces again, and I would never hear that laughter.
Wow.
And we were zoomed up on the 78th floor.
So when you get back to the office and you
I
find,
got back.
huh?
One man stopped. And he walks into the men's room, and I never saw that man again. And I got back into the office, and the telephone is ringing. Get out. As soon as I pick up the phone, the young lady is saying, get out. Get out for what? You're not watching the news. You're now logged onto the monitor. Get out. We don't have time. Please, Stan, please. A young lady from Chicago, one of our rep offices, who is home, 1 hour time difference behind. They knew at this point it was a terrorist attack, and I didn't have a clue. And as I'm talking to this lady, still standing up, I'm looking in no particular direction with the phone in my hand, and I just happened to look straight south towards the Statue of Liberty. And what I saw first was a little speck of a plane. And within the split second, it's getting larger and larger and larger and larger. And I can hear the sound that this plane is making as it's coming towards me. And I'm mesmerized. And as I'm looking, the plane starts to tilt. And you can hear this revving sound in the engine. Like when the plane takes off, well, multiply that by 1,000. And that's the sound I'm hearing in my head. And before I know what was happening, all I did was just drop the phone, screamed, and said, Lord, I can't do this. You take over. All this is happening within the split second. And I dove under the desk. And the next thing I know, the plane, bam, crashed into the building. Had I been standing, chances are the nose of the plane would have given me a direct hit right here.
Wow.
So the plane crashed into the building. Boom. Big yellow orange glow of flames. The floor above me collapsed and is hovering right over the desk that I'm hiding under.
Wow.
It's like a demolition crew came and ripped the entire place apart. It looks like somebody took a giant bag of cement and threw it in the air. And flames are all around me. And all the cables that are in the ceiling dropped, and they're short-circuiting because the sprinkler system came on. Mm-hmm. One way or the other, I'm dead.
Right.
The only desk that stood firm is the desk that I'm hiding under. My Bible's on top of that desk.
Wow.
Amazing. And I'm scared. I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I'm going to burn. I'm going to die. I'm going to get sucked out by the air pressure, or I'm going to get electrocuted, or this floor is going to totally collapse and kill me. I'm going to die.
Right.
And I started screaming, Lord, send anybody to help me. And the first scream I screamed, somebody at the other end of the floor heard. And the person had a flashlight, waving it over the head. I can't see the person. All I saw was that light. Please don't leave me to die. I'm saying, wait for me. And I'm dodging all the cables, and I'm holding on to the mangled furniture. And I crawled the entire length of the loans department to the lounge, in the computer room, in the communication room. And one lousy sheetrock wall stood firm, preventing me to go on the other side where this person was. As I got there, I can hear faint because my ears just popped when the plane hit the building. So I'm looking around, I'm seeing the flames encroaching, and the person is saying, bang on the wall, I'll know where you are.
Wow.
I hit the wall, the man says, I can hear you now, climb over, hollow ceiling. And hanging loose pieces of sheetrock and wood all over the place. I tried to grab on the first time, and I missed. And part of the hanging loose sheetrock just caved in, trying to prevent me. Raise up my hand, and a black sheetrock screw passed through my palm. Oh my God, what happened? A nail went through my palm. Bite it out and try again. I can't do it. You must do it if you want to live.
Wow.
And I can't do it. He said, is it attached to a piece of wood? Yes. He said, hit the wood and the nail is going to come out. I took the second option. The nail came out and the hand just ballooned.
Wow.
And I start crying to this invisible God who I've heard so much over the years. Lord, if you wanted me to die, why did you bring me here to leave me? What is going to befall Jenny and the two girls? How are they going to be able to survive paying all the bills and everything? And as I'm crying out to this invisible God, this man is saying, you're going to die, climb over. And all I remember, I made a fist as tight as I could. And I start caressing the sheetrock wall, and I don't know why. And I made a fist and I punched as hard and as fast as I could. And my hand flew through that sheetrock wall. You asked me to break a piece of wood, I can't do it. And I don't know how that happened. All I remember, the man grabbed my fist. I said, when you see the rest of my body, yank me through. And the hole got bigger, bigger, and bigger. I punched. And I struck my head, and the man gave me a headlock. And he pulled with such force. And I squirmed, and I flew over on the other side, knocked him off his feet. And we rolled down 10 flight of stairs. And we landed on the 80th floor.
You rolled down. Did you just literally fall?
We just rolled down. Like Jack and Jill just tumbled right down. We just rolled.
And then when you get 10 floors, you're 10 floors down, you're still not...
One floor, 10 flight of stairs. One floor. 10. Yeah. So we are now on the 80th floor, 80. And when I got composure, I was lying on top of this guy, and I don't know how to thank this man who just saved my life. I just hugged the man and gave him a kiss on the cheek, and he said, what are you doing? And he got up, fixed his jacket and tie, and he says, Brian Clark. And I said, Stanley Praimnath. And this man did something that I'll go to the grave remembering. The man held my hand, and he took his left index finger, and he started caressing this wound that I had, that was bleeding. And the man stared me in the eyes, and he said, all my life, I live as an only child. I was born and raised in Canada. I always wanted a brother, and I find that man today. And that man, with all the compassion and all the love, he put his hand around my shoulder and says, come on, buddy, let's go home. And he had a left palm that was bleeding. He took my right hand and he rubbed them. He says, from today, you're my blood brother. In a day when AIDS and HIV virus was prevalent, he did not think twice. And that man, regardless of the color of my skin, this good old Irish man hugged me, called me his brother, and says, come on, buddy, let's go home. And we started that long journey home.
Let's take a break. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is Stanley Praimnath, and he's taking us through the harrowing journey of surviving 9/11 in one of the towers that ultimately both fell on that day. Here we are 20 years later, Stanley, and listening to you tell the story, it's almost like it just happened yesterday. Has that moment in time just been indelibly seared into your brain and into your heart, where whenever you talk about it, it seems like it just happened?
It is a moment that was seared in my soul, actually. It's something that I would have to live with for the rest of my life. But it's a constant reminder of where I was and where I am today. When God reached down in his mercies and pulled me out of the towering inferno. When God sent that guardian angel, Brian, to lead me through out of Sodom and Gomorrah to save me. So every time I talk about it, I get emotional. I relive it. It's like happening today, and it's 20 years.
Do you think, though, in that moment when you still have 80 more floors to the bottom, are you able to trust God that he has sent now your brother to save you, that you both will be able to get out? Because I'm sure there were thousands upon thousands of people that were all trying to get to the bottom just as you were.
I trusted God with every fiber of my being, and I know He is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all I can ask or think. And I knew that once that this man could navigate me because I lost my senses at the time, I will be safe because He's in control.
Mm.
And He is. And Brian navigated me through the stairwells.
So y'all,
But one,
do y'all actually trek down the last 80 floors by stair?
we, yes, ma'am, we tracked down 80 floors by stairs. You had to walk 10 flight of stairs, turn on a landing, another 10 flight of stairs, then you cover one floor. So actually 20 steps, one floor. We got 80 floors. That's 1,600 steps.
1,600 steps. My God. And then
So
you're injured. You're injured on top of that.
yes, I was black and blue, covered with pulverized cement, and I was swollen. And I had a large leg wound that was opening up, and I had this palm that had a nail puncture. But one thing I remember telling Brian all the way through, we got to hurry. It's going. And he said, Stan, what is going? What you see here is a steel structure by profession. I'm an engineer. Steel don't bend. What do you see burning there is all cosmetic and draperies, paper. No, we got to hurry. In my sixth senses, I knew something is going, but I couldn't figure out that the building is going down. But what I keep saying over and over, we got to hurry. It's going. And he says, Stan, you're in shock. We stopped because I couldn't breathe, and I was in the best shape of my life.
Mm-hmm.
We stopped at one floor, and Brian put his hand against the door, opened it up. He picks up the phone, called his wife to tell him that there's a guy from Fuji Bank I have here. I'm bringing him home. He is in a bad shape. But while he's on the phone, something caught my attention, and something that I live with every single day. Every night before I pass out and sleep, I would hear the same voice in my head, and I would look at the same faces. And I don't describe people in color, but I will today. An African-American security guard stood up. A Caucasian gentleman was on the floor, closely shaved head, massive head injury. I can see blood and bubbles oozing out of this man's scalp. Back was broken. And this man is crying out the same cry that I hear every night. Please tell my wife and the baby that I love them. We just got married. And that security guard could have escaped, but he chose to stay. And they never made it out, and they both perished. And every single night before I sleep, I can hear that cry. Please tell my wife and our baby that I love them. And that man, that security guard, he was the unsung hero. He guarded this man with his life. I tried to reach my wife and I couldn't. When the first plane hit the first building, they were watching from the office window. And as they watched, they saw the second plane came in. When the plane hit the building, she knew in her heart that I was a goner. And she just went home. One of the girls took her, get her something to drink, put her in a car, drove her to the train station, and she was gone. So she's just waiting to hear the news that I'm gone. So we continue walking in the lobby of the 81st, from the ground floor of the second tower. And what we saw there were firefighters and cops and EMS workers. When these people saw us, they were shocked because they never expected people to be in the building still, not realizing from my floor going upwards, everybody was trapped coming down.
Right.
Brian later told me that when he came to my floor, he was coming with a group of 6 other people. They saw all this debris. They thought something worse was happening. The rest of them went back up. They made the wrong choice. He stopped to help me, and that's how we lived.
Wow.
So
he stopped to help you, and that's what saved his life.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am, because everybody who went back up, they perished.
Mm-hmm. And so after you get out, Stan, and you realize, that more than 3,000 people died that day. how do you begin to process why you lived and the
Well, I've
miracle
asked
that God
myself,
granted you?
I asked myself that question many, many times. Lord, why me of all these good men and women? Why? And I stopped one day and asked myself, why not you? Why not you, Stan? And I may never understand why young people die and old people live. I may never understand that selective process that God uses. He is sovereign. He can do whatever he
Mhm.
chooses. I never know that answer. All I know, in his mercies, he reached down and he plucked me out of that fire and I lived. And it's all because of his grace. Had it not been for that divine grace, I would have died. And I don't know the answer to that question. I've always asked, why, why,
Mhm.
why? No.
Wow. Let's take a break here, but when we come back, Stan, I want to talk about 20 years later. And it's so obvious that you love God and you have a heart for God. And it's so refreshing to see, and what a miracle you are. Let's talk about, on the other side of the break, 20 years later. Stay on
20
point. We're
years.
back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're talking about 9/11, 20 years later, and we're talking to a miracle. There were many miracles that came out of 9/11, but there were many, many deaths as well. Stan Praimnath is our guest this morning, and he takes us through this harrowing story. It's so harrowing that those of us who are old enough, if we wouldn't have seen it, it sounds like it was right out of a novel, but sadly, we all lived it. The world lived it. We watched the buildings and the people. And I can remember that day vividly, where people were trying to find their loved ones, and it was so much chaos. And you were a part of that. And you came out. And during the break, we were saying that we know as believers that it was God's grace and his mercy that he saved you. And once you started to realize that you would live and not die, when did you decide that this was going to be a life-changing, pivotal moment for you?
Well, after I came out from the Trade Center and I got home, a couple of months passed and I started having this nightmare. I would dream. And in my dream, I can hear this voice. I'm not seeing a person, I can hear this voice. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. And I would get up. Oh my God, I heard the voice again. Next night, it looks like a tape recorder, replaying again. Same thing every night. And I would sit on top of the bed and I would tell my wife, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't gamble, I don't go to parties, I don't dance, I don't do all these things. And she would tell me, Stan, I don't know what you're doing that you're not supposed to do. And then I got invited to go to a church in Missouri, Springfield, Missouri, Parkcrest Assembly of God, and the pastor there was Pastor Scott Temple. And we came out to the parking lot and he said, Stan, are you okay? I said, Pastor, physically I'm okay, but emotionally I'm not doing well. And he said, what happened? And I told him about this reoccurring dream. And he said, I'll pray for you. No fancy prayer, Lord, send down the fire, nothing like that.
Mhm.
Just put his hand, touch me, just put his hands over my head in the parking lot. And he prayed a simple 1-minute prayer. But when he was done, I felt like when somebody flipped the switch in my head. So fast forward the tape, I got home. I would travel on the weekends and back to work on Monday and nobody knew anything. I still work for a Japanese bank. So my wife would ask me the same questions. She would wait up for me if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. She would have a cup of tea. She would get me something to eat. And she would ask me, okay, Stan, so start from scratch. All right, Pastor picked me up from the airport. I went there, feed me well. We went to church. And she would ask me this question, was there a good harvest of souls?
Mhm.
God, you have to see this. We made an altar call and 25 people came and surrendered lives to the Lord. And we would rejoice. And then I told her, I said, I got to tell you something. She says, what? I said, I'll become a pastor. And she says, no, 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 no. She said, all my life, I live in a home where my father was our pastor. Before I was born, he was preaching. I'm a pastor's daughter. And I know the struggles that my father and my mother went through, going to witness 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and we are home by ourselves. I don't want that for our children. I says, no, you did not marry a pastor. You got married to me. I'm going to become a pastor. And she says, so what do you need? I said, I need $1,000. So what are you going to do with $1,000? I says, I'm going to enroll in the Marine Bible College in Global University, and I'm going to study. She says, Stanley, your schedule, working late hours, you're never going to be able to do it. I says, you watch me. And I became a certified pastor. And then I continued studying. I don't know why. I became a licensed minister. And it was because of God's doing, wanting to tell of his grace. I feel if I become a pastor, I'll be more equipped to tell. So the one leper who the Lord healed, 9 went away, 1 stopped to give thanks. Thank you, Master. I want to be that person. So I remained faithful. He kept his side of the bargain, and I'm keeping my side of the bargain. He brought me out. He put me on a rock to stand, and I'm doing what I told him I'll do. Get me out of here. I'll do whatever you want. So I'm being.
So you gave your life. So you gave your life to Christ.
I gave my life to Christ. That is correct.
And
I think that's the thing I ever did.
Wow. And so,
but that I was a churchgoer. Yes, ma'am.
You were a churchgoer. And so do you think before that you knew God, or did you just know about him? Did the intimacy come after he saved you?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I've always been that person. I've always been that person. I've always gone to church. I've always did the correct thing in my heart. Prior to 9/11, I was a Sunday school superintendent. I was a Sunday school teacher. I was a men's group leader in my church. So before all this, I was an active member of my church, where my father-in-law is our senior pastor. Today, he's still the senior pastor. I serve as an associate pastor in the church. Still doing the same thing. Exactly what I used to do, in addition to travel and speak on weekends whenever I'm called. So church groups call me, government offices, colleges, schools, wherever they call me, I go. Speak my heart out, hop back in a plane, come back, and the next day I go back to work.
Wow. How is Brian today, 20 years later? The man that saved you.
Brian assumed the role as a big brother towards me. Brian is the kind of guy who calls me up on an average once every 2 weeks. I call him GQ, and he called me his brown brother. He's the kind of guy who remembers the children's birthday, the anniversary, and he would go, "Hey kids, this is Uncle Brian." That's Brian Clark.
Wow. And so,
hey, Jay, how you doing?
And so, Stan, many people don't have your story, and are not really able to rejoice maybe 20 years later like you are. And so how were you able to get beyond the trauma of that day and so much death and so much uncertainty to get to where you are? Was that too God's grace for you?
I call it the quest, the jihad, from where I was to where I am now, that whole big curve. See, what I did was to wrap myself around the Lord. Went to church one day. I had the church key. I just opened up the door and I went before the altar and I knelt and I says, Lord, your word promises me that you will fight my battles and I will receive the victory. And that your word promises me that you will never leave me as an orphan. You never brought me all this far to desert me. Lord, I'm leaving all my cares, all my problem at the foot of the cross. And if you see fit, pick me up, elevate me, resuscitate me, let me live. I want to go on to tell of your grace. And I, from there, never went back to the Lord and told him that. And you know what? I received that healing like, I received it. And the Lord elevated me, lifted me up in places that I've never gone, people that I never thought I would see. I interact, and all I did was to tell them that good news of the divine.
Wow. Stan, thank you so much for making this day that we look at and have still so much pain and anguish over, really, really helping those that will hear this message understand that God is still on the throne. He's still good, and He's still in the miracle working business. May God continue to bless the work of your hands. Thank you so much for sharing with us this morning, Stanley.
Many blessings to you and all your listeners.
Indeed. Hey, everybody, stay on point. We're back right after this.